Joshua chapter 6, verse 1, we're going to open up there. If you have your notes or if you have your Bible app, you can pull that up. It's going to come up on the screen for you. Joshua chapter 6, verse 1. And it says this. It says, "Now Jericho was shut up inside and outside because of the people of Israel. None went out and none came in. And the Lord said to Joshua, 'See, I've given you Jericho into your hand with its king and mighty men of valor. You shall march around the city, all the men of war going around the city once. Thus shall you do for 6 days. 7 priests shall bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark. On the 7th day you shall march around the city 7 times, and the priests shall blow the trumpets. And when they make a long blast with the ram's horn, when you hear the sound of the trumpet, then all the people shall shout with a great shout, and the wall of the city will fall down flat, and the people shall go up, everyone straight before him.'" Y'all ever get a gift before that you didn't understand? Like you got a gift and you're like, "Hey, what is this gift?" Like, but you're trying to be like super polite, because your parents like raised you better than to just be like, "What is it?" Like when you're young, you ever met a little kid who's like, they just tell it like it is, Like they're like, "What is that? Why did you give me that?" Like Rylan, yeah, my son, yeah, he'd do that to you. You're like, "What is this?" He's pretty cool though, so I like it. But so anyway, you get a gift that you don't understand, right? And then what do? Like you try and figure it out for a minute. Like after they leave, you start asking people around you, like, "Hey, do you know what this is? Like, what is it for?" And then like we always forget, like we could read the directions, but that takes too much work. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh man, why would I read the directions? Let me just Google it. Like I'll just find it on Google. And we have this whole thing where we don't understand what the gift was. Well, today I want to talk to you about breakthrough. And sometimes we may not understand what breakthrough is. Sometimes we may look at breakthrough the same way we look at a gift that we don't understand. And so that's what we're talking about tonight. We're talking about breakthrough. I love this text. There's a lot of really cool things in the story of Jericho. If you grew up in church, man, you sang songs about the walls of Jericho, And I don't remember them, but I'm not that good. But we would sing songs and we talk about breakthrough, and a lot of times we romanticize breakthrough with God. Like that's what we do. Like we want God to give us breakthrough, but we don't want it to be the way He typically gives it to us. You know what I'm saying? And this is what I mean by that. Like in verse like 2 or 3 of our text, it says, "Now God says to Joshua, 'I will give you Jericho.'" Now, when you think of a gift, what do you think about? Someone hands you something, right? Like this, like, "Here, I'm just going to give you my wallet. It's heavy. Don't drop it." Yeah. There you go. So now that's got my debit card in it. That's got my credit card in it, right? So like you don't know how much money's in there. Maybe empty, maybe maxed out. You never know, right? But it's a gift. So now what do you do with the gift? It's yours, right? Like that's the gift. And so we think that when God says, "I'm going to give you the city," a lot of times when we look at the situations in our lives, when we look at the things that we're facing in our life, that's how we expect God to give us breakthrough. "Here, it's yours. Take the truck. You can have it." Right? And that is partly what God is doing for us, but we misunderstand what He's really doing with it. And so then when we encounter hardship and we encounter maybe a fight, we're like, "What is this? I thought you said breakthrough was coming. I thought you said this was going to happen." Now, in this story, you're going to see that Joshua, later on, we're going to read it in verse 20. It talks about how they had to go into the city. Now, I used to read this story like this. This is how I read the story of Joshua and the walls of Jericho. They walked around in silence. One time, the first day, they walked around, they're completely quiet. Everybody's looking at them like, "You're weird. What is going on? What are you doing?" Then they leave. They do it the second day. Walk around, no talking. Third day, same thing. Fourth day, fifth day, sixth day, all the same thing. On the 7th day, they walk around it 7 times. And you know what they do? They shout. Ah, this is Sparta. You know? And what happens? The walls fall down. I used to read that story like that was it. That was the end of it. Because what I wanted from God in my life when he would tell me, I've set you free from something, I've given you the gift of victory, what I wanted from God is for him to break down the walls and take care of all the enemies inside the city and just give it to me with no work. That's what I wanted. So I want to ask you this question. What do you do when breakthrough doesn't feel like breakthrough? When God told you, I've set you free, I've delivered you, but then you're still in a battle. How do you handle that? What do you do with it? You know what I typically do when breakthrough doesn't come the way I want it to? I throw a fit. That's what I tend to do. I'm just talking about me. I throw a fit. Come on, God. I thought you said you gave me the city. I thought you said I was going to get over this. I thought you said it was going to be this. I thought you said it was going to be this. And yet, here I am and I'm still facing something. In case you don't know the story of the Israelites, I'm going to go as fast as I can here and give you a little Bible history, okay? Bible history is good to know. You should read the Bible. It's cool. There's a lot of cool stories, especially in the Old Testament. So what happens is God told the Israelites when he delivered them out of Egypt, he said, I'm going to give you a land that I promised to your forefathers. You're gonna take it. So they get out of Egypt. There's the 10 plagues. All this stuff happens. God literally splits the Red Sea wide open. Like they've seen God do some cool things. He's leading them in the day with a massive cloud and at night with a wall of fire. They've seen some stuff that would say God can do anything. And you know what happens? They go in to spy out the land that they're supposed to take over. And you know what they can't stop talking about? The giants. They literally walked across the Red Sea on dry land. Over 1 million people. They're walking by fish up in at the wall. They're like, oh, hey, that's a cool turtle. You know, they're seeing things. And then once they get across to the other side, the wall of the sea comes crashing down. And all of the Egyptians are taken out. They've seen God deliver them. And all they can look at is the giants in the land that God promised them. And 10 of the 12 spies give a bad report. And they say, we've got grapes that it takes 2 people to carry the cluster of grapes because they're so big. It's a land flowing with milk and honey. And that's how we do God sometimes. God tells us, I'm going to give you that land. And we could talk about how good it looks. And then in the same sentence, when God said, I've delivered you, I'm going to give you breakthrough. I want you to see it. But it doesn't look like what you thought it was going to look like. There's giants in the land, God. I thought you were just going to give it to me. I thought they were going to be dead already. We were just going to walk in and it was going to be easy. So then you face real things in your life. Persecution from your friends because they don't understand the fact that you're trying to pursue God. Distractions all around us. The struggles and the temptations that we have in our lives. And we're looking at all those things and guess what happens? We have a hard time focusing on what God said. So you know what happens to the Israelites? God gets mad. He's upset with them. And they didn't have Jesus. We've been completely redeemed from our sin. God gets mad. And Moses, he goes to bat for him. He's like, God, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't kill them all. Let's not start over. You know, because what God told him, he said, listen, Moses, we're just going to start completely over with you. Moses was old at that point. He said, I don't want no more kids. Jesus, help me. And so they wandered around in the desert for 40 years until every person who complained died. That's interesting. What do you do when breakthrough doesn't feel like breakthrough? Let's keep going. Verse 6. So Joshua the son of Nun called the priests and said to them, take up the ark of the covenant and let 7 priests bear 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the ark of the Lord. And he said to the people, go forward, march out around the city and let the armed men pass on before the ark of the Lord. And just as Joshua had commanded the people, the 7 priests bearing the 7 trumpets of ram's horns before the Lord went forward, blowing the trumpets with the ark of the covenant of the Lord following them. And the armed men were walking before the priests who were blowing the trumpets, and the rear guard was walking after the ark while the trumpets blew continually. But Joshua commanded the people, you shall not shout. Be helpful if I could read. You shall not shout or make your voice heard. Neither shall any word go out of your mouth until the day I tell you to shout. Then you shall shout. He just told them to be quiet for a long time. Is that hard for anybody to be quiet? It's hard for me to be quiet. I like to talk. Y'all remember playing the quiet game? I was always out first. Why do you think God told him to be quiet? I've been pondering about that. Why do you think God told him to be quiet? Here's what I think. I think they had a hard time 40 years before declaring what God said to them. And so God made them be quiet so they could hear what he was saying to them. Sometimes what you need is for the voices around you to tell you what you need is for God to speak into your heart the promise that he has given you. And for you to be quiet and just listen to it. Can you imagine what was going through their heads when they're marching around the wall? First of all, it's a big wall. It's a big city. That's a long march. I'm thinking in my head, why we got to be quiet? Why can't we say nothing? Right? But God was doing something. When you need an idea of what to do when breakthrough doesn't feel like breakthrough, the best place you can start is to get quiet. That's where you start. If everybody started talking right now, would anyone be able to hear what anyone was saying? Not very well, right? Y'all ever have that happen? Huh? What? It's loud, huh? Say it to me. Say, I can't hear you. I can't hear you. That's why you start with being quiet. You start with being quiet. Verse 20. So the people shouted and the trumpets were blown. As soon as the people heard the sound of the trumpet, the people shouted. So this is what happened because we skipped some verses. They get to the 7th day. They've marched around 7 times. Now they are ready to shout. They're ready to obey God. And so they sound the trumpet. And as soon as the people heard the sound of the trumpet, the people shouted a great shout. And the wall fell down flat so that the people went into the city, every man straight before him, and they captured the city. Then they devoted all in the city to the destruction, both men and women and young, old, oxen, sheep, and donkeys with the edge of the sword. So this is an intense story. It's all about breakthrough. It's all about the promise. But are we acting with our gift that God's given us, victory? Do we act like that means we shouldn't have to battle? Let me put it in perspective to the gospel. Jesus died on the cross. He took our place, paid for our sin, and handed us the keys to victory. He said, look, I did what you couldn't do. I paid the price. I lived a perfect life. And now I was made to be sin so that you could be the righteousness of God. And he handed us righteousness. And you know what we think most of the time? Because God handed me my freedom, because God handed me my victory, I shouldn't have to struggle, and I shouldn't have to fight, and I shouldn't go through bad things, and it should be easy for me to follow Jesus, and I should just be able to go and do whatever it is that I want to do and have victory. But that's not how it works. Because the victory given to us does not exclude us from fighting the battle. You are going to be in a battle. The devil does not like that you're trying to follow Jesus, that you are following Jesus. The devil does not want you to hear that breakthrough is going to change your life. He doesn't want you to know that you're not actually fighting for victory, you're fighting from victory. Because if you understood that you were fighting from victory, you would quit trying to strive for victory and you start walking in the identity that you are a king's kid. Victory has been paid for, and though I'm in the battle, I already know the outcome. So I don't have to worry about what I'm seeing because I know that I'm winning. Because he already won. So when I look at my relationships that aren't going the way that they're supposed to, when I look at that bully who's been bullying me, when I look at all the temptation in my life, when I look at all the things trying to get my attention, I quit looking at that when I know that victory has been paid for, and I start looking at Jesus who paid for victory. And everything changes. But maybe we've been misunderstanding the gift he's given us. Just because you got saved doesn't mean your life's going to be easy. The majority of the disciples who followed Jesus were murdered for their faith. With the exception of Judas, who betrayed Jesus. He died. But he wasn't murdered for his faith. And John. But they tried to kill John. Y'all know they tried to boil John in hot oil? It didn't work. God saved him. Then he spent the rest of his life on an island mining and writing the books of the Bible. So he still didn't have it easy. So what am I telling you tonight? I'm telling you this. When you get on the battlefield of breakthrough, celebrate that he's already won, and you can go in with confidence. Now look at the miracle here. We're about to be done. We're about to go to worship. We're going to worship at the end. I know it's a little different. We're going to go worship, then we're going to go to a small group. But I want you to see this. Can you imagine? Now, what you have to understand about the walls of Jericho, they were the biggest, thickest walls you've ever seen. Miles thick. Tall walls. Very tall. Very, very tall. It looked impossible and impenetrable. You know what I always thought about? When God let the Israelites go to fight that battle first, I thought it was the very city that made them feel like grasshoppers the most, which is what they called themselves before they walked around in the desert for 40 years. Because God was trying to remind them, it's not about how you see you, it's about how I see you. And if you'll put your faith with what I've said about you, there is nothing that can stand in your way because I'm bigger than the walls. And if you would refocus and look at me instead of yourself, you would know I've paid the price for this. And it changes. Think about the miracle. They shout. There's a bunch of them. It's loud. And all of a sudden the ground starts to rumble like an earthquake, and the walls fall down. Can you imagine what the people of Jericho were feeling? Scared. And then they go in and they do what God told them to do. And there was breakthrough. But after the walls fell, they still had to fight. God's paid the price for your walls to come down, for the battle that you're fighting. But you still have to fight it. I want to leave you with this. One thing, if you could remember anything, I want you to remember this. Breakthrough isn't about what you see. It's about what God said. Because when you see with your physical eyes, you'll see your limitations. But when you see with your faith, which comes by your ears, by what you hear, by what God said, when you see that it's not about what you see, you can say, it doesn't matter what I see because I know what God said. It doesn't matter whether or not it looks like an impossible thing. My God is the God of impossible. And if he said it, he's going to do it. And I'm going to put my faith in what God has said because I have seen him time and time and time and time again break through in my life. So if he brought me to this battle and called it breakthrough, I'll receive the gift of breakthrough and I'll fight on the battlefield of breakthrough.